There's bipolar 1 disorder, bipolar 2 disorder, cyclothymia. We're going to talk about the diagnostic criteria between those three, and it will help you differentiate, but really the most important thing to do at this point is to talk about what a manic episode is, how that's different than a hypomanic episode, because that's really the factor between these three bipolar disorders. When we talk about someone who has experienced a manic episode and compare it to what we call a hypomanic episode, this is where we are looking for a change from their typical behavior. You have an idea of how I act. So if I came in to class this morning and I was talking so fast that you could barely keep up, and I was going from topic to topic to topic, and I was starting to talk about things that really had no relevance to what we're talking about today, and then I go to tell you that I haven't slept in the last 2 days, but I've got so much energy, and I've got so many things to do, and I've got so many things to say, and I've got all these ideas, would you think that the way I'm acting today is different than what you've seen the last few weeks? Hopefully it would be a little concerning to you, maybe a lot concerning to you. Your thoughts would be either she's on speed, or oh my gosh, what if she's in a manic episode? Okay, because again, you're looking from a change from what you normally see. When we talk about how to identify a manic episode, we look for what we call elated or expansive mood, someone who's just in an incredibly good mood, an increase in energy, or we sometimes see an increase in activity. So they need to have this, they need to have this, and then they need to have at least 3 inflated self-esteem. So they start behaving in ways that just are not typical to them. Decreased need for sleep. Let's talk about what we know about human beings and their need for sleep. So when we see people who are sleep deprived, they're irritable, they're cranky, they're generally not super coordinated. Sometimes their movements even slow down because they're so tired and all they can think about is sleep. However, in a manic episode, what we see is even though the person maybe hasn't slept for 2 or 3 days, or maybe they've only gotten a total of 4 hours sleep in the last 3 days, instead what we see is they're feeling on top of the world, they're speaking really quickly, they've got all in their mind, all these great ideas, they have this energy that you haven't seen before, their activity is higher, their self-esteem is better, which is completely opposite of what we know when people are sleep deprived. So that indicates right there that there is something different in that person's biology that is different than a typical human being. This decreased need for sleep used to be up here. It used to be one of the requirements. But we still, that's one of the first questions. Have you ever gone 2 or 3 days with no or very little sleep and still felt very good? If the answer is yes, our concern is either drug use or mania. So are you getting a picture of this person? They haven't slept very much for the last couple of days. They're speaking very quickly. They've got all these great ideas. They have all this energy to engage in these great ideas. Sometimes they are delusional. We can see what we call delusions of grandeur in a manic episode. A delusion is a false belief with evidence to the contrary. Sometimes we call it grandiose thinking. You may see that term instead, grandiose thinking. Okay. Racing thoughts, or sometimes what we call flight of ideas. So racing thoughts, also called flight of ideas. Meaning they've got all these ideas kind of coming through their mind fast and furiously, one at a time. Pressured speech, where the person is more talkative than usual. And they will say, I had so much to say, I felt like I had to get it out. I could not stop myself from talking because I had to get it out. It's not required, but it's one of the things that you may see. Distractibility, poor decision making. Often their decisions or poor decisions usually falls into one of 2 realms. People are known to make disastrous financial decisions that really negatively impact themselves and their family. Another realm that when we're talking about poor decisions is in terms of sexual health and sexual behavior. For some people, there's this hypersexuality that seems to surface that was not there before. Not uncommon for someone in a manic episode to have sex with 2 or 3 different people in one day. Some of those people they may not have even met until that day. You see where that can have pretty disastrous consequences as well. Because of the delusions in thinking, which some people in a manic episode have. But more importantly, because of these poor decisions that people in a manic episode often make, it is required that they are hospitalized. Keep them safe from their own bad decisions until the manic episode is treated. So if someone is showing this set of symptoms for at least a week, or maybe it's less than a week, but maybe they were hospitalized at day 3, then they have met the criteria for a manic episode. Left untreated, manic episodes can go on for months. We never want to leave a manic episode untreated. There are changes in the brain that occur with every manic episode, and those changes in the brain are actually detrimental to the brain. It is imperative that someone who's in a manic episode be treated, to give them medications to bring them up, and then to stay on medication to try to prevent future manic episodes. Self-harm is something we're concerned with. The harm comes to themselves when they engage in these really risky behaviors with poor decisions. That's where the harm comes. And that harm usually is directed towards self, not necessarily even purposefully, but very unlikely is it going to be where they're causing harm to others. Now, again, is anything possible? Yes, but it's very unlikely. A true manic episode is never going to show up and go away in one day. That's not a manic episode. And remember, this is what we see, but a manic episode could be going on and we just haven't necessarily been in contact with the person to see that it's actually been going on. It can surface at any time, and it usually comes on pretty abruptly. You have to have at least 3 of these. I mean, the list is much longer than what I have here. Has to be present for at least a week, or hospitalization required. Hospitalization is generally always required once we know a manic episode is in full swing. While psychotherapy doesn't necessarily help people with bipolar disorder, I'm here to tell you, psychotherapy can help people who have bipolar disorder patch up some of the relationships that were stressed during the episodes. Do you have an idea of what a manic episode is? Let's talk about what a hypomanic episode is, because this is the differentiating factor between bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and cyclothymia. Hypomanic episode. We have elated or expansive mood, increased energy or activity. You also see at least 3, except there are no delusions of grandeur in a hypomanic episode. What we see in a hypomanic episode is similar symptoms, but kind of less than or under. So not as intense as a manic episode, similar symptoms, minus a few, but not as intense. With a manic episode, the whole decreased need for sleep, so the whole idea where they haven't slept for the last 2 or 3 days, you don't generally see that in a hypomanic episode, but you tend to see that in a manic episode. But the biggest thing, besides for no delusions of grandeur, is this is at least 4 days, but no hospitalization required. We definitely are seeing a change in behavior from before, but it's not as intense, so it doesn't warrant hospitalization against the person's will, which is a big deal, by the way. We also don't see any delusions. A hypomanic episode does not always interfere with social and or occupational functioning. Soft impairment is always present in a manic episode. It is not required in a hypomanic episode, and often people can function enough. So difference in duration, difference in the need for hospitalization, no to soft impairment necessarily.